everyone, and welcome to the 12th episode of Point of View, a series of leadership discussions by amazing workplaces. In this series, I'm getting into a discussion with people in leadership positions from various organizations spread across India as well as across borders. The idea is to get into conversation with them, to get them to share their views about the various aspects that make organizations really amazing. The purpose is to understand what drives leaders to their own workplaces so that we can delve deeper into the corporate philosophy and share with you path breaking ideas. Ideas that come straight from people who have gone ahead and changed their workplace to make them better, more inviting, and extremely thriving for their own people. Today, our guest on the show is someone who has worked on some of India's largest brands like Reliance Industries, Rasna, Dhara Oils, etc. His passion lies in creative writing. In his own words, he can write long hours for food, money, shelter, and amusement on a daily basis. Interestingly, he has been instrumental in captivating us through his everyday musings, written under the hashtag board poetry for the past 5 plus years. He is also an avid collector of free pebbles, stones, rocks, and sand from across the earth and beyond. He is none other than Pratap Suthan, known to be one of the more reputed creative leaders in the Indian advertising industry. Pratap has a credible and proven experience of almost 35 years and has led large multinational agencies, including Grey Global and Chain Worldwide, nationally, regionally, and even globally. He has, to his credit, several extremely popular and creative campaigns, such as Incredible India, India Shining, Samsung Mobile's Next is What, and Jabong's Be You. He has been on the Cannes Lions jury, has won several national and international creative awards, and won the only Euro Effie ever won by Asia Pacific for creative work done for Incredible India. Still more recently, Pratap launched his own digital agency, Bang in the Middle, 9 years back, of which he is co-founder and also the chief creative officer. Hello, Pratap. Welcome to our show, Point of View. I'm really so delighted to have you on the show today.
Hi, Ekta. Thanks for inviting me. Welcome to speak to you. Very
It
happy
would
to
be
speak to you, rather.
it would be a pleasure, for us. This is the first time we're talking from somebody, even from a creative line. So, in the series, we've been talking to people from the corporate world, and I've been toying with the idea of, talking to someone from a creative agency because I personally had a small stint at a creative agency, and I know the kind of, the environment at an agency is very different from that of a corporate environment. So, I thought, why not speak to you and let the world know about, how a creative environment is different from a regular corporate environment.
Yeah, which is very true. You know, see, you can't really say that agencies are not corporate offices or corporate brands, so to say. They are,
Yeah.
right? But unlike the typical, corporate organizations, agencies offer you much more freedom,
Right.
right? Much more freedom, much more what do you call dexterity, fluidity, opportunities, and a lack of, there is no wearing a suit to office culture or a tie to office, right? I mean, it's
Mhm.
far more freer because at the end of the day, what you really produce, whether you are a planner or a servicing head or in media or whatever, at the end of the day, it is the advertising or the content that you create,
Yeah.
which is the ultimate output of that organization. Right now, to reach that and to get that output out, there are no structures really. Anyone can be, anyone can spark off an idea. Anyone can give the direction, and there are no. While there is a creative department, nobody says that the servicing person cannot give you an idea, or the planner cannot have an idea, or the media person cannot have an idea. A junior can have an idea, a senior can have an idea, anyone. We are an ideas world, we're an ideas industry. We are driven by ideas, right? So anyone who's capable of coming up with a point of view or a thought or an idea is the main capital of an agency. And that capital does not perform if you put strictures around that person.
True.
The freer you are, the freer you think, right?
Yeah.
And therefore your produce becomes more profuse and you have more things coming out, right? So which is the reason why advertising agencies are the way they are. The way people speak, the way the people dress, the way people hang around in office. A lot of us come to office, uh, and I can say that on behalf of most creative people, they don't come into office to work. They come to office to have fun. So that's an approach that works beautifully.
Right, absolutely right. And there's so much of connectivity with the end product as well, because we have been, living with brands for their entire life. Even as a child, as grown up, everywhere we go, we are connected to brands. So that connectivity is very relevant, in this case. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So Pratap, you have spent 8 years in Mudra, 11 years in Grey Global, before moving to Chail and then opting to go independent. So, what are the various aspects that contributed to your long tenure in your first two jobs?
Okay, that is Mudra and Gray, right? Yeah, you see, you need to get a little bit of background, before I can come there. So essentially, I'm from Trivandrum, okay, Kerala. After school and college, while I was interested in writing, nobody told me that I could get into advertising. Advertising as a profession was never in the discussion area at all. You had to plan your life to either become an engineer or a doctor, right? Because at least that is where people were headed, right?
True.
And the ones that did not make that cut were either looking at the administrative services, or the armed forces, or things like that.
Yeah.
Creativity as a profession, was never really seen as a serious pursuit. It was never a career option for anyone. I mean, if
Yeah.
you were a painter, well, you can be a great doctor, but you also paint.
Right.
Or if you can sing, you could be a great banker or a administrative guy, but in the evening you come back home and sing. But it was more of a part-time hobby
Yeah.
rather than a full-time career option, right? So that's a background where I grew from. And then thankfully, I went abroad. I was in the US, for almost year and a half too,
Yeah.
and which opened up my head in a big way, right? As is, I was influenced by a lot of Western movies, Western books, and then of course living there changed the way I looked at things. I looked at opportunities. I looked at people. I interacted very well with them. The fact that I could speak English and that too without an accent, helped my cause as well. Because a lot of people couldn't really believe that I had just come in from India and I could speak English, right? Perhaps even better than them and write better than them. So all those things added to the confidence that I had. And like I told you, I always liked writing.
Yeah.
So when I came back, I and it wasn't that I'm from a family that needed me to work. If I wanted to take it easy, I could have taken it easy.
Yeah.
I could have stayed back in the US if I wanted, and I didn't want. So I came back. So getting into a job was never a pressure for me,
Yeah.
right? So I came back and I realized that what I wanted to do in life was right. I was very clear. So in those 2 years, I wrote a lot. I mean, I wrote a lot of poetry to myself. I used to write a lot of posters. I used to work in a shop. I used to write
I've heard of that. Yeah.
in the US. I used to write posters for the shop, and people used to really like the stuff that I used to do. You know, so I knew that writing was there. So when I came back, two of my friends, who were very well-known names in the film industry,
Yeah.
Sangeet Shivan and Santosh Shivan.
Okay.
Okay, so and they were seniors from my school, and they, because they are from a creative family, films and everything, they knew what advertising was, and I didn't know. So they are the ones who said, look, with your kind of writing ability that you have, you
Yeah.
should actually get into advertising.
Okay.
And they introduced to an ad agency in Trivandrum. That's where I started, figuring out, oh, this is something which I really love to do. And then I landed in Mudra. There was a ad that I saw, applied for it, got interviewed for it, and I landed up in Ahmedabad. Now, Ahmedabad, interestingly, while I lived in the US, you know, and you can imagine as a 23, 24-year-old living in the US without parents, have some money in the bank, right? There was a lot of beer evenings, there were a lot of music band concerts to go to, there was a lot of traveling, there were girlfriends, all sorts of things. There
Yeah.
was a lot of freedom over there.
Right.
And then I landed in Ahmedabad, where I could not speak Gujarati. I can't speak Hindi even now.
Yeah.
The only language I knew was English. Because in college, because my second language was French, the only other language I could speak a little bit was French. So if
Right.
I got stuck, in English, I would switch to French. I mean, not that I did it, but I was more fluent in French than I was in Hindi or Gujarati, right? Of course, Malayalam was there,
Obviously.
and Malayalam was my mother tongue, and is my mother tongue, and that is something which I could never use in Ahmedabad. So when I landed in Ahmedabad, I could not really fit much into the local community, So my relationship with the local community was, I have a house where I go to stay. I say good morning in the morning, and I'm out of there, and I reach office.
Crazy. Yeah.
And then office was obviously everybody spoke English, and it was all fine. So, and it was very comfortable. It was
And we are talking of which year?
1987,
87. Things are so different there in that.
and it did not have the pressure of a large city.
Yeah.
I mean, like in Bombay, you would find
Even
it.
the awareness was not there because what we see today is so much. I mean, everybody knows about everything.
Right.
That was time. There were those times were when nobody knew anything actually beyond
That's
education.
yeah, that is true. And the Mudra office in Ahmedabad
Right.
is a very unique office in the sense that, see, those days advertising was one of the best paid professions in the country. The best minds in the country worked in advertising
Right.
because advertising as an industry made a lot of money. Because you have money, you could hire the best minds.
Right.
And Ahmedabad had IIM, had NID, had Center for Architecture, some of
Right.
the best minds in the country, creative minds and management minds, were uh, kind of concentrated in Ahmedabad, which also meant we had those kind of people work in Mudra. And Mudra being India's first an Indian agency,
Yeah.
and Mudra Ahmedabad being the biggest office that Mudra had, it attracted a lot of heavy duty minds.
True.
So when I joined there were at least 9 or 10 IIMA graduates or PhD chaps. So the quality of thinking in this office was very high.
Yeah.
So when you get thrown into that sort of cerebral mix, so even if you don't know,
Yeah.
by the pure questions that people asked you, you had to raise your thinking.
Right.
So if there was a capacity in your head to think above beyond you, that gave you the best environment. And to me, because the people were good, and like I said, because it was not Bombay, because it was a small city, it was a homely city, so to say, I didn't want to leave that place.
Okay.
And like I said, I was never really in it for the money. I was in it for the opportunity and my and freedom to express.
Right.
So at the age that I was in, I got an opportunity to work on India's best fashion brand at that point in time, which was Vimal.
Women. Yeah.
I used to go for shoots. I used to meet some really amazing people, good-looking men and women, you know, and it was all glamour at that point in time. We used to go for shoots in Bombay, and people liked my work, and my work was being talked about. Yes, of course, I also won some awards at that time. So everything was good. Some of my best friends, even today, are from Mudra, Ahmedabad. And it was a place where merit was rewarded
Mm.
and awarded as well. Very Indian.
Yeah.
There was nothing put on. There was just very honest, genuine, and a real agency. Of course, and then of course there was A.J. Krishnamurthy, who was a chairman, who believed in the Guru Shiksha kind of, kind of an environment,
Yes. Yeah.
which is very good, and it really worked for all of us. So that was the reason why I stayed in Mudra Ahmedabad for 9 years. And of course, at the end of my 9 years, I also got married. My wife Jo is from NID,
Right.
who is in Ahmedabad. And once we got married, and then we had a son, Abhi, and that's when we realized, so maybe it is time to leave the city, because if I have to push my career, and if she also had to push her career, we had to leave the city purely for professional reasons. Nothing for person, nothing for money or nothing for any other personal
Yeah.
reason. So, which is the reason why we went out, and then of course eventually I landed up in Delhi with Gray. So, like I said, Gray was on the other hand American agency, far more corporate than what Mudra was. Great people to work with. Also newer brands and newer challenges, right?
Right.
And again, also a place which pushed me because see, I did not come in as a copywriter. I came in as creative director.
Right.
So I had leadership role from day one. And of course, Delhi Grey was not as big as or as well known as Grey Bombay because Bombay was extremely creative, extremely well awarded,
Yeah.
and we were a speck compared to the Bombay office.
Mm.
So for me, I came from Mudra Ahmedabad, which was the biggest agency that Mudra had. So I was used to having more space and more say and more freedom and liberty, and I had this thing of I could get what I wanted in Mudra, which I did not get in Grey Delhi.
Right.
So I had to fight for it, and the only way I could get that was to make sure that Grey Delhi grew and became big, and eventually Grey Delhi became 5 times larger than Grey Bombay.
Really?
Yeah, so that also it was also opportunities that came by. So
Right.
when you have great opportunities which allow you to do great work, then you don't want to leave anything. Why do people leave? People leave because they're not wanted in a place.
Yeah.
And they're not wanted in a place because they're not good at their work, or they hate the work that they're given. And
Right.
it comes through in the work and in their relationships.
Right.
Now, for me, like I told you in the beginning, uh, I jump in. I got into advertising because I wanted to have fun.
For the passion, basically.
Right.
You
So
loved what you did.
absolutely. So for me, it was it was never work.
Yeah.
I would go to office to have a lot of fun.
Fun. Yeah.
You know.
Right.
So it was never boring. It was I never had any pressure. Completely easy. You see, the thing is that if there is a meeting tomorrow morning, the fact is that you know that there is a meeting tomorrow morning,
Yeah.
and you need to have an idea by then, right? You don't know where ideas come from. There is no book that you can refer to, right? It
Yeah.
has to happen in your head. Some connection will have to happen, right? Of course, a brief can take you closer to a smaller area where you can operate. At least it will be pointed in that way. But the final idea, you have no clue where it happens from.
Right.
but that by the time you have your meeting, you have the confidence that you will have the idea. So
True.
somewhere along that time, it'll come from somewhere. Across all my years, I have never really not met a deadline or not gone to a meeting without an idea. So if in 35 years I do not have the problem, I don't think tomorrow I'll have the problem. So that is essentially one of the reasons why I stayed back. And Gray also allowed me to grow.
Yeah.
Because of the work that Gray Delhi did, they promoted me to National Creative Director in 2003. Then, of course, I also started growing regionally, right? Because Grey Delhi was the an office that delivered almost 45% of profits for Grey Asia Pacific. So, from a Grey Asia Pacific point of view, also they said, look,
Really.
yeah, Grey Delhi is something. There's something happening in Grey Delhi, and some amazing people worked with me. See, the other thing is that, like I said, because I went in to have fun, um, I was open enough to let my juniors also work along with me. And I was never scared of anyone.
Yeah.
I was never threatened by anyone. Everybody had a lot of fun under me. That much I can guarantee you. In fact, when we grew uh, from where Delhi was to eventually when I left, so I became NCD in 2003. I left in 2007, and till that time, I don't think anyone left any office in Grey.
Really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody moved in creative at all. We
It's
made some
pretty
very
interesting. Yeah.
interesting,
Mm.
hired some interesting people. Well, some were good, some were bad, but I don't think anybody left. And people leave because of politics.
Yeah. Toxic culture, basically.
Essentially, yeah, essentially politics and things like that. So in Grey, we had a fantastic. See, what is an agency? Agency is basically no office has a written culture, right? It's a culture that belongs to the people who work in
Yeah.
agency.
Right.
Now, you transfer the same number of same people to another agency, the same culture goes to that agency,
True.
right? You can always brand it
Yeah.
that as this is our style of working versus your style of working. It's the same style.
No, thanks, Pratap. I think that was pretty interesting. In fact, there are a couple of things which I never knew about Grey Mudra. Thanks for throwing light on the same. And
Welcome.
so, I'll not, go into detail, but, recently I read an excerpt from a book by Abhijit Bhaduri. Um,
Okay.
and, he's also an ex Mudra.
Yeah, he is.
And
Yeah.
he has mentioned in his book, when I worked at Mudra Communications, an ad agency, the saying was our assets walk out of the door every evening. Treat them right so that they want to come back tomorrow morning to give their best ideas. You have spent 8 years at Mudra yourself, so how does this statement resonate with you?
Now, see, the thing is, this is exactly what an organization, especially an agency, ought to keep in mind, right? The only capital of an agency are its people,
Right.
because ideas are not made by machines yet. Ideas come from people, right? Ideas come from people and the right people. Now, if you don't take care of them, if you don't protect them, if you don't give them a conducive environment to work in, then they won't come back. So, which is exactly what I said.
Right.
The reason why people did not leave the agency that I led during my great times was purely that there was absolutely no politics.
Yeah.
It was open. It was meritocracy. It was a lot of kinship, a lot of friendship. Um, some really inspiring women who worked there. There was no difference between men and women who worked there.
Right.
I never encouraged anything that went against women working. Ideas are not female or male. Ideas are ideas, right? You're not a copywriter or a copywriteress. You're a
True.
copywriter,
Yeah.
right? You're not an art director or an art directoress. You're an art director,
Right.
right? So there is no
Gender bias. Yeah.
gender bias in designations, and why should there be in the work that you do and the place where you work in.
Right. So, Pratap, tell me one thing. How is a creative work environment different from the environment at any other corporate office? Have you ever felt that difference? How can we take the best from both worlds? So we have been discussing the comparison a lot, but how can we take the best from both worlds? If you can throw some light on that.
Okay, so see, you need both the systems.
Yeah.
You can't have each system trying to mirror the other. It doesn't work. What's also interesting is when the advertising agency walks into a client's office,
Yeah.
there is always a perk up in the environment, right? Because the client or whichever office is
Yeah.
hosting you at that time, they know the guys with ideas are here. So the whole floor lights up. There is a smile on everybody's face, and I've experienced that in every office that I've walked into. Not just me. I'm talking about the entire team that walks in. They know that the guys who have a lot of fun are here, right? Hopefully, we'll have great ideas and we'll have about a fun. I have never been part of a meeting where we were told not to pipe down and to go easy on the energy. It
Where
was all,
you're absolutely serious.
yeah, it was always that you guys are welcome. You guys come here and you change the whole decor and decorum of this place, and you inspire us. And it is always like that. So now, on the other hand, today a lot more agencies and a lot more companies and organizations have also changed. They've also understood,
Yeah.
that you need to give your people more freedom,
Right.
right? Especially if you look at media companies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Journalists, and again, of course, they have similar issues of timelines and deadlines, and if somebody has
Definitely.
to be on 9 o'clock news, you have to be on 9 o'clock news,
Right.
whether you have the story or the footage with you or not. So there's a lot of pressure as well. A lot of organizations have also changed the place. I mean, look at Google and Facebook and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and look at the offices that they create. Facebook, for example, I mean, it is a platform. It is also a very creatively led organization. Even the Facebook office in Gurgaon, for that matter. I mean, they have a music room also. I've been there a couple of times. You know, I mean, look at Google Labs and stuff like that. I have a lot of friends who work in Google, etc. Far more creative. I mean, while there's a lot of logic in what they do,
Yeah.
it is also important. Organizations know that they have to give people that little space, to push their luck and push their expression or powers of expression, so to say. Where do you think the wall came from, right? I mean, Facebook has a wall. Wall is where you write,
Yeah.
and every office of Facebook has a wall where people can go and write stuff. And see, at the end of the day, you are not a product of the environment. By putting a guy who is not very creative in his head, if you put him in a very colorful, amazing place, great ideas don't come from his head.
True.
Now, on the other hand, creative people by itself are very colorful inside their heads, right? I mean, you put me in a bus stop, in a railway station, I will be far more creative than I am in the office because I carry my environment inside my head.
Right.
So it's also the quality and the caliber of the people
Of the
and the makeup of the people that matters most.
Thanks, Pratap, for answering that question so well. So, tell me one thing. As a creative director, you have led many successful creative campaigns. When an idea is generated in one mind, how does the team own it equally and take it to completion?
See, like I think I touched on it earlier. The fact is that when I am part of a group
Yeah.
that is searching for an idea, like I said, the idea can come from anyone. So it is not necessary that it has to come from the creative team or from me for that matter. It might be an intern who might just say, look, you know, I my role is to spot ideas.
Right.
While I have done a lot of work, created a lot of campaigns myself, my role today is also a little different. It's also in spotting an idea or spotting half an idea and building on it.
Right.
That's also something I do. But while one person, and it takes many people to make the environment conducive
Yeah.
to helping somebody come up with that thought. Now, while I may have that idea, or one person in the agency may have that idea, today you're looking at mainline advertising, that is television, newspapers, radio, outdoor. Then you have digital,
Yeah.
then you have social, right? Then you have experiential, then you have activation. So there are so many elements to it.
Right.
Now, and each of these, even if it is social, the same idea is interpreted very differently for Instagram.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The same idea has a different expression on LinkedIn. The same idea has a different expression on Facebook and on Twitter.
Because the
And
audience is different everywhere.
yeah, and on TikTok, so to say, right? Even in Instagram, I mean, if you're doing your story, so to say,
Yeah.
the way you do it is very different, right? So one person alone is not. While you may have the main core idea, today there are people who interpret it platform wise,
Right.
and which is where the team comes in today. See, and therefore, if I have the core idea and I develop it on Instagram, that suddenly becomes my idea. So
Right.
it is an offshoot of the main idea, but the expression of that, along with the technology that I use, will become my interpretation of that idea. So therefore, that idea becomes mine too. So today, that is how it spreads. Even the tech guy, gets inspired by something, and he says, "If this is the core idea, I think I have a nice way of interpreting this in, using this particular technology or the artificial intelligence layer to it, or whatever." Or the search guy might say, "Look, if I use this kind of way of interpreting this idea, I think I can get more people searching for my stuff, right?" So everybody gets involved. So, which is why it is important to have a central idea, but today you need a team to have this idea come alive in various platforms.
True. Yeah, very relevant in today's times, actually. And in fact, even earlier, like you mentioned, the environment of the agency is such that even if the idea is coming from one person, everybody feels that it's their idea because they're working on it.
Yeah, and see, the role of the creative director is to make sure that the character of the idea doesn't change much.
Right. Okay, interesting. So, Pratap, that brings us to one of the last question, basically. Uh, Advertising and PR agencies have long been run very differently from other businesses. That's something which we have been discussing, throughout this conversation. So, how does leadership in a creative agency like yours look like? You have a team of 65 people, like you mentioned, and you describe them as not creative but happy. How does that combine? And what are the workplace experiences that left a mark in your life, which you have imbibed in the agency Bang in the Middle?
Okay, so the happiest agency that I have worked in
Hmm.
till now is by at least a mile is Mudra Ahmedabad.
Okay.
Okay, and why did Mudra Ahmedabad have that kind of an impact on me? The reason is very simple. It was, see, Mudra Ahmedabad also reported directly into the chairman, who
Okay.
was A.G. Krishnamurthy.
Right.
A.G. Krishnamurthy was the all in all of the agency, right? He could not be threatened, very clear. His position was 100% stable. At least in the years that I was there, it was AGK. AGK was given the mantle, saying that you run this agency. This is your ship, you're the captain.
Right.
So you can't oust the captain, correct? So the captain is, he doesn't have to look behind his back. And when you don't have to look behind your back and you don't have to go around uh, sabotaging your juniors,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people, a lot of leaders are scared of their places.
Right.
They're 100% and always worried about who's going to come and take my chair. So they make sure that they destroy their their immediate juniors.
Right.
Anyone who's a threat is kicked out or is sent away or is given a bad increment so that that person goes away. The politics of securing and safeguarding your position is paramount to these idiots. Okay, I don't think they're even leaders. But
Right.
unfortunately, 90% of the people whom you have uh, put in those places are people like this. I have worked with couples, so I know.
Right.
Versus Krishnamurthy, who did not have that fear. So for him, he wanted people who are really bright and very good, and therefore he grew an army. He had amazing, brilliant minds next to him, right?
Right.
But his own success came from the fact that he was fearless because you're not worried about your office, you're not worried about your chair, you're not worried about your salary, right? Those things are taken care of, and you were in a place where nobody could question you.
Right.
So you had unchallenged leadership. Now that frees your soul and that frees your mind, and it takes you away from all these small things, you know,
Right.
all those worries. Okay, that helped Mudra to grow to where it was. It allowed him to have really formidable people report into him who were leaders by their own right.
Right.
Okay. Now that is the learning that I took out. In the sense, if you are in a position of leadership, be fearless, be so good that your place is always certain and taken care of. And you don't have to worry about your back. Even if somebody stabs you, you can just turn around and say, "Why are you coming after me with a toothpick?" If you have that sort of confidence and security in your own ability,
Yeah.
then you don't have any problems. Then you are happy. Then you only concentrate on delivering the best of work. And you're not worried about whom do I have to keep away from my door? Whom do I have to keep away from challenging me? You know, that was a learning I've taken. And that is how I run my place. Today I don't fly business class anymore, right? But that's okay. I've done that for many years, and today anyway nobody pays for business
Okay.
class tickets anyway.
And today nobody is flying also.
Correct. So those fears are not there anymore. Those fears aren't there. So which basically means that we have no politics in office. And of course I have a partner, great partner, Naresh.
Yeah.
And Naresh is like, again, same. See, both Naresh and I know each other for a very long time. And he has his strengths, I have my strengths. So yeah, so we have, sometimes we have, professional differences in the way we approach something. But that's fine. It can't be that we are happy all the time with each other. I challenge him, he challenges me.
True.
but both for the same cause,
Right.
So, and he is not worried that I will replace it. I'm not worried that he'll replace me. Both are co-founders,
Right.
right? So we don't have any problem with each other. So therefore, why should be people having problems with us? Why should I create? I mean, look at it this way. I will be very happy for great people to work with me today because I want my agency to go ahead. So
Right.
I give all the freedom and ability and opportunity to people. Yes, I don't have the money which a Denso will have or a Nogilvi will have. I don't have those kind of resources. But I offer the greatest resource which is there, which is a fearless agency to work with,
Yeah.
where you don't have to worry about your job. And during lockdown, we never sacked anyone. Whoever was there in the agency before lockdown started is still with us. In fact, we've added more people.
Great.
You know, so which is where that thing comes from. and and the way we see it, the bigger ideas you bring us, the better it is for our agency.
True.
And because both of us have enough and more experience, we will make sure if it's a big idea, it'll go through. At least we will try our damnedest best to push an idea, to multiply that idea, and give it at least a decent burial, if not anything else. You know,
Right.
yeah,
That's truly insightful, Pratap. Thank you so much for very candidly sharing your entire, journey from US to India to the
very
bang
welcome.
in the middle, and in the end, it was really wonderful speaking to you today. Thank you so much once again, and thank you for coming on our platform.
Yeah, welcome, Ekta. Thank you for calling me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye.